stories. This story takes place between 2012 and 2017. I was a shy, nerdy kid. I didn't have any friends, and no one seemed to care about my existence at school. My home life wasn't much better either. I'd go home, and my father would just stare at the TV. He never asked about my day, probably because he already knew that I had nothing going on. I would get home after school and turn on my computer and play World of Warcraft from about 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. I didn't really care about my grades at school. My 10th grade year, I met a kid named Adam. Adam was a neckbeard. Adam was an asshole and a know-it-all. I didn't really like Adam. Adam would follow me around and even asked to come to his house after school. I first thought Adam was gay, so I told him no thanks. Adam then blurts out, "I'm not a homo, dude. You can come over. I'm not going to try to fuck you." As we were walking, two other guys, Ronnie and Mark, joined us. The smell of must and body odor seeping through the halls. Mark smelled like shit, and Ronnie smelled like burnt rice, and they'd talk about random anime characters and different martial arts styles. I tried to stay out of the conversation. Then Mark asked me what my favorite martial arts was. I told him I didn't want to answer, and he calls me a pussy. Mark and Ronnie push me away and tell me to get lost. I am confused. Adam looks at me and tells me that I need a beard to be accepted. I waited for a few months, and then my beard started coming in. I went back and was accepted into their group. While we were in the cafeteria playing Pokemon, some jocks come up and start picking on us. Ronnie begins to stand up, and the jocks push him down and tell Ronnie and Mark that they were going to get their ass beat. Adam said that it wasn't our fight, and that we shouldn't get involved. Ronnie and Mark fought the jocks after school and got the shit kicked out of them as expected. Adam invites me to his house, and we play video games. And when suddenly Ronnie comes up, he wants to ignore that we are doing something. Ronnie wants to play Smash Brothers and demands that we unhook whatever we are doing. Ronnie starts trying to force everyone to play it, and we don't want to. Ronnie then gets pissed off and walks out onto the porch and is sitting around trying to get someone to ask what's wrong. I end up taking the bait. "What's wrong, Ronnie?" Adam palm smashes his face, and then Ronnie perks up and starts rambling about his back and his neck and his anxiety and all of this other shit, and he shoots down every bit of advice I give him, and then he looks at his phone and leaves. I ask Adam what that was about, and Adam tells me not to worry about it. Ronnie calls Adam and tells Adam not to trust me and that I shouldn't be there. Adam rolls his eyes and hangs up the phone. Ronnie called my phone and started trying to be my friend and hang out on Tuesday night. I tell Ronnie that I don't trust him, and Ronnie then buys fast food and asks if I want to play Minecraft when we get back to his house. When he asked about playing Minecraft, I got up and walked outside. Ronnie came outside and demanded to know what my problem was. I punched him in the face, and he left me alone. He later told his father that I'm not allowed over there anymore. Ronnie then goes and picks up Mark and the other guy. One night I drove there late, and Ronnie and Adam and Mark and some others were watching CP. I turned around and walked out and left and went home and sat down, and I called the police. I shaved my head and my beard. The police arrested all of them, and that was that. They were sentenced to 15 years behind bars, and I never heard from them ever again. This happened like 2 years ago. So for context, I'm a guy about 24 years old. I met this guy named Frank at Wawa. Frank used to go to Wawa every night for his coffee. I was just chilling outside Wawa, not really doing much, and somehow Frank and I became friends. I started going to his house and playing video games, and it was fun. Frank was a neckbeard. He was a 23-year-old child. He had Pokemon and Mario Brothers everywhere. He loved Nintendo. One night at Frank's, I was telling him about a woman I'd met, and he would scoff and make rude comments. I told him to stop. Then he said something back. I don't remember what he said, but it seemed like it implied that if I were to bring her over or around, she wouldn't be welcome. And that if I did anything for a woman, I was a cuck. I started dating the woman. Her name was Sarah. Sarah called one night when I was at Frank's, and he got pissy and said something like, "She already trying to fucking control you? I wouldn't put up with some bitch trying to run my life." I did not answer the phone because I could see that Frank was upset. I explained to him that I didn't tell her I'd be here, and he told me I shouldn't have to tell her anything. I said to him, if I didn't tell her and she didn't know, how the fuck is she going to know that she is bothering us as you say she is? Frank ignored me and started acting like his back was hurt. Frank would continue to complain about his back and neck problems. He would act like he could hardly walk and do all kinds of shit to make you feel sorry for him, just so he could gain control over you. He would try to convince you that every relationship or friendship with a woman was a waste of time. He'd say that women are all whores and that he doesn't want them bleeding everywhere. He would complain about women being on their periods, yet he'd do all the things women do on their period. And he'd talk about women in the most disrespectful way he could. Yet, at the same time, he was still mama's little boy. It was downright fucking weird and gross how shamelessly he enjoyed spending so much time with his mom. I called to ask if Sarah and I could come over, and he acted like he was tired and didn't have the energy. I called him the next day, and he said yes when I told him Sarah wasn't coming. When I got there, he would walk around real slow holding his back like he was a 90-year-old man and huff and puff in pants and try to get me to pay attention to him. I ignored him and texted my girlfriend. He then wanted to go to the hospital because he was having an anxiety attack. He then deliberately tried to make his heart rate go up by doing shit like worrying about the smallest little fucking thing. I got up to go to the bathroom, and there was a small hole from a screw that had fell out. I peeked through the hole, and he was sitting there just fine. He stood up and stretched, and was looking at something online about how to get sympathy in order to control people. I asked him what the fuck he was looking at, and he said nothing. I demanded that he pull it up, and he refused. I told him that I would expose him for being fake and lying. He told me that he'd ruin my life and tell everyone that I was a pedophile. He then changed the subject to computers or something. Sarah broke up with me, and Frank seemed very thrilled about it. He said she was a nasty bitch and that she was controlling. Neither are true. Sarah never lied to me, never cheated, and never tried to be controlling. She broke up with me because she wanted to focus on herself. Frank said she was a selfish bitch for wanting to focus on herself, yet Frank would cuss me out and tell me to quit bothering him and refuse to hang out with me on the nights he had to work. He would tell me that I was being needy and annoying. He would also try to get me to quit my job and take the night off, etc. And then if I got fired, act like he had nothing to do with it. He would not shower, and then he would make me feel like shit if I told him about it, and told him that he smelled bad. No matter if I told him politely, he would tell me that I ate too much and I would barely have a sandwich. He complained about me drinking too much soda, while he sipped the same nasty iced coffee for 8 or more hours. He would deflect and say I was wrong, and he didn't do or say something when, in fact, I know that he did. He would try to make his other friends into pansies and make them weaker and more pathetic than him and gain control over them and tell them that their problems were not as severe as his were. I finally said fuck it and stopped hanging out with him. He then told me that I had no right to be the way I am, and that he was just helping me, and that I was a piece of shit for criticizing his lifestyle. His lifestyle consisted of complaining about women while being mama's little boy, complaining about gays, complaining about black people, complaining about people that won't give him sympathy for his supposed problems. He would make jokes about murdering infants. He would give women dirty looks and stand too close to me at the store and try to get women to think that we were gay so that they'd leave me alone. He would act like he was gay in the store on purpose, then complain about how he doesn't like gay people. He would sleep most of the day, wake up for a bit, hang out with me or someone else for a few hours, then sit around and bitch about being tired and how you were ruining his sleep schedule. Yet, he was the one that wanted to hang out with you. Eventually, I just said fuck it and I got tired of his shit. I went home and I looked down deep in my heart and tried to find a redeemable quality in him and came up with none. He was rude. He was brash. He was selfish. He was jealous. He was hypocritical. He was lazy. He was a terrible friend. And I gave up and stopped calling. 8 months passed and he didn't bother to check on me, call me, text me, or tweet me. And then one day in the summer, I get a text. I haven't heard from you. What's your problem? I didn't do anything to you. I answered the text message with, I've been busy. I'll call you tomorrow. I never called, and that was the last time I ever talked to him. I used to have this friend in high school. His name was Tom. Tom was a neckbeard. He wore anime shirts, trip shorts, and had a long beard, and wore a beanie most of the time. I met Tom in 10th grade during math class. He was smart. I was struggling to comprehend algebra, and he was assigned to help me. He ended up teaching me really fast. Tom wanted to be a teacher or something like that. He said that he wanted to move to a different country. I think he said Japan or something. Tom and I would hang out a lot. Tom started showing me things that he'd find on the deep web. It wasn't anything bad. Actually, a lot of it was mundane and boring. Tom would invite his other friends over, and then I'd have to stand outside until the guy left. I figured it had something to do with buying drugs, but I didn't question it. I didn't really care if Tom was using drugs. Shit, during that time, considering how much stress and anxiety I was having due to school and other teenage drama, I was hoping he'd ask me to do drugs with him. One day, while I was over at Tom's, his friend came and I stepped out, waiting, and his friend left. I asked Tom who the guy was, and if it had anything to do with drugs. Tom looked at me and said, "Don't say a word." I was like, okay. I was really nervous. Tom then pulls out these DVDs that he had burned. And I was like, okay, so you're selling pirated movies, I asked him. Tom then gives me a blank look, and then closes the drawer. He then asks if I want to do some drugs. I tell him that I've never done drugs before. Tom goes to his mom's room and brings back her bubble and lights it. I'm just sitting there wondering what the fuck he is doing. I had no clue what he had. He then takes a big hit and asks if I want to try it. I ask what it is and he just tells me not to worry about it. I wasn't sure of the side effects or how I'd act, so I told him no. He then shrugs and sits down and I leave. The next day at school while in math class, 2 cops come in and arrest Tom. Tom is taken to jail, and later I find out that Tom was selling illegal porn to the other guy that kept coming over. The police tried to accuse me of being part of it, and I told them that I had no clue what he was doing. Tom was released after the trial because they didn't have enough evidence to convict him. I asked Tom if it were true that he was selling illegal porn, and he just told me the system is trying to shut down his right to free speech. I asked him what the fuck he was talking about, and then he showed me his DVD collection. Tom was something else. The shit I seen made me sick to my stomach. Tom then tells me that I had better not say anything. The DVDs were filled with neo-Nazis raping Jewish women and other stupid racist and perverted shit. I asked him if he was a Nazi, and he told me some shit about Zionists in the media and a bunch of other random nonsense. I asked him what happened to the Tom I knew. Where are your anime shirts and all of that stuff? Tom got angry and told me that anime was created by the media to control and emasculate men and turn them into pussies. He continued to ramble on about things like hip-hop and other conspiracy theories. I left at 10 p.m., and I was thankful to be away from him. I later found out that the shit that he wanted me to try was crystal meth, and I think he'd smoked himself stupid and become paranoid about the government spying on him. He was later convicted of molesting his little cousin and sent to prison. I never seen Tom again. I have no idea how he went from being a neckbeard that watched anime and was good at math to being a neo-Nazi and a pedophile. But I'm glad that I got away from him when I did. When Tom started talking about the Nazi shit and other shit, I no longer wanted anything to do with him. If you're new, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me out. And if you are already subscribed, welcome back and thank you for subscribing.